going live, Geeta.
Yeah. Yeah. Shall we begin?
Yeah, sure.
Okay, yeah. Yeah. Good evening, everyone. And Bhaswati, good morning to you. And welcome to another session of Talking Films Online. Today, we have Bhaswati Ghosh from Ontario, Canada, who will be leading the discussion on the film Photograph. Bhaswati writes and translates fiction and non-fiction. Her first book of fiction is Victory Colony 1950, published by Yoda Press. Her work of translation from Bengali to English, My Days with Ram Kinkar Bej, has been published by Neogi Books. This work also won her the Charles Wallace India Trust Fellowship for translation in 2009. Her stories have appeared in Letters to My Mother and My Teacher is My Hero, anthologies of true stories published by Adams Media. Bhaswati's writing has appeared in several literary journals like Cargo Literary, Café de Senses, as well as newspapers such as Times of India, Statesman, and Pioneer. Welcome, Bhaswati. Over to you.
Hello, everyone. First of all, I must thank you all for allowing me to lead this discussion and to participate in this forum. Big thanks to Geeta. This has been sort of long overdue. I've been looking for a film that I could share, but our streaming services are never in sync. What you see in Canada, you don't get in India, and vice versa. So I'm happy that we could finally land a film that we can all talk about. So I'll start sharing my screen and let me know if you can see it. Are you able to see?
Not yet.
Okay, so share.
Yeah, now it is.
Okay, I should do the slide share.
Yes, it's visible now.
We go to slideshow. Are you all seeing the notes and all?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, not anymore.
Okay, from beginning. Okay. Yeah, so
there's a problem with your audio, Bhaswati. Bhaswati, there's a problem with your audio.
we have today. Yeah, am I online now?
Yeah, you are.
Okay. Yeah, so Rafi is a photographer who is based in Mumbai. He's originally from Kanpur, but works in Mumbai as a photographer, and he works hard to pay off a family debt. His grandmother, played by Farooq Jafar, wishes to see him married, and she's constantly pressurizing him to find a suitable match. So he convinces his grandmother by showing her a picture of a shy stranger he has photographed named Miloni, played by Sania Malhotra. And when Rafi's grandmother further prods him to introduce her to his fiance, he tracks her down and discovers that she's a student belonging to a middle class family.
Bhaswati, just a second. We are not able to see the PowerPoint.
Yeah, I'm just reading the synopsis. So,
Okay,
Okay.
okay,
yeah,
fine, fine.
I'm still on the first slide.
Okay,
Okay.
sorry, sorry. Yeah, go ahead. Yeah.
No, no problem. Yeah, so, he convinces his grandmother that, he has found a girl. And then, they meet. And, despite their differences, social and economic differences, they're able to create a unique bond. So that is a brief synopsis. Now, okay. So, so for me, the point of the moment of the film, the defining moment of the film, is the photograph itself. When the photograph in question is being taken, uh, this sort of struck me because the specifics of the photograph are hidden from the viewer. Rafi, accosts this young woman, asks her, to get a picture taken at the Gateway of India. And when she agrees and he asks her to smile, the camera suddenly turns to her back. And so we see her back. We don't see that smile or any of her expressions. We see her back, we see the expansive gateway overlooking both of them. So, despite a very public setting, I thought this was a very clever way to bring about an intimate moment between these two characters. They are surrounded by people, yet in that moment when he asks her to smile and it's not revealed what her expressions are, it becomes a moment between these two characters. Sorry. And for me, the very tangible element of a physical photograph, uh, took me back to another time because who takes, who gets physical photographs? We all have smartphones now. People walk with selfie sticks. So this kind of is an ode to also an earlier time when there was an excitement about getting these photographs taken in tourist spots. So it's the pre-selfie age. And the letter that Rafi writes to his grandmother is also symbolic of an earlier time, but also of another India. It's an India which still communicates through the written word. It's probably not so much by way of texts and WhatsApp chats, but there is still that segment of our population that still communicates through letters. So I felt that these two elements kind of stood out in terms of signifying a different time and a different India. A very significant element of photograph, I felt, were the pauses and the silences. So this is a film that has a very even and a steady kind of pace. At least to me, it didn't feel slow, but then it's not hectic or it doesn't have an electric pace. So, in keeping this even pace, this steadiness, I felt the use of the pauses and the silences was very telling. And done, it was incorporated in a very effective way to heighten the film's poetic poignancy. For instance, this scene itself, this visual that we see here, in which both of them.
I'm sorry to interrupt you, Bhaswati. Are you
Yes.
still not sharing your screen? Because we don't see your screen.
Oh, I am sharing. I've gone through several slides.
No, no,
I
we cannot see that.
no,
We
we are
are
only seeing you.
Oh,
We are not
not
seeing this.
able to see the
That's why
screen.
I asked you on chat, but I guess you're not looking there. So could you just share your
yeah. So
screen?
how do I go to share
It was
screen?
there earlier, then it went off actually.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah,
How
now
about
Now
now?
it's there. Now it's there.
You see it?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, we can see it.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, I don't know what happened there. I'm so sorry.
And that's okay. That's okay.
Okay, so we were on this slide, where I'm talking about the pauses and the silences that the director has incorporated to, to tell the story in a very gentle, at a very gentle pace, and they sort of heighten the poetic poignancy of the film. For instance, in this particular scene, in which both of them are traveling in a best bus. Uh, Firstly, this is one of the few spaces which is a sort of a democratic space. This bus, which kind of erases, or at least it bridges the divide between the economics of the two backgrounds. But secondly, Miloni spots that Rafi is in the same bus, and then she quietly makes room for him to come and sit next to him. So a scene like this, which without using any words, expresses or conveys a lot, with its silent gesture. We also have a scene where Miloni is looking out of the boat earlier in the film, when they have come to visit Gateway of India. She's just looking out on her own. It's a very crowded boat. There are lots of people, but here is we get a glimpse of the person in that moment, where we see her quietly taking in the sea, and reflecting quietly. So that was this is a kind of a standout uh, element of the film for me. Uh, Let me know if you can see. I guess screen is still being shared.
Yes.
Yes,
Very
it
much.
is.
Okay,
Yes.
okay, okay. So, so continuing with that aspect of of using those pauses and silences, uh, that's also how the director has sort of captured the psyche of an introvert, or the inner world, and he has brought about the details of an introvert. So in Miloni's case, we see that hers is a second-hand existence. We always see her from somebody else's lens. From very early on, we see that her family members are weighing in on her choice of a dress, and we see her through Dadi's lens, in her conversations with her. There's seldom that she, tells us about herself. We see her on a billboard, so we know that she's a brilliant student and so on. And even the photograph, which is an inanimate object. So we are seeing her through this lens of an inanimate object, but which she then interprets to the grandmother. So I thought that that aspect of being this shy person was brought out very well, or established early on very well. The other thing that stood out for me in this film was how stereotypes have been busted. We see people from two very different backgrounds, and there are a lot of stereotypes for both, for both how upper middle class people should behave, or do think. And then there is this othering of the migrants. They're kind of always seen with suspicion. People who live in slums, there are perceptions, all kinds of perceptions about them. In Bombay, it's always a hot topic. The people from outside and so on. But it's all those stereotypes have been busted so subtly with uh, the gentle affection with which Rafi and his world, his universe, has been portrayed in the film. It's their surroundings, and there is a lot of despair, there is poverty, but it's shown with so much of dignity. and a gentle affection, that you see the other side of it, that there is a lot of bonhomie. They live in a hovel, but that is where friends come together in the evening. There is raillery, there are jokes being cracked, there is sharing of food, and despite the circumstances, they find a lot of happiness and joy. And similarly, a modern educated woman, we have all kinds of ideas and notions about them, that they will be confident, and they will be on their own. But Miloni is a character who kind of defies, or who does not fit into that mold. She is happy to others make decisions on her behalf, or she's neutral to that. So again, not fitting into the typical mold of an upper middle class educated woman. So I felt this stereotype busting was done very effectively in this film. And I found this one of the biggest strengths of the film, I thought, was the interimness, what I call the interimness of the film, where things happen between the scenes, but we don't really get to see how that happened, but we come to know that it already has happened. For instance, I think the biggest example is right after the bus scene, where the two of them are sitting together. We see that they are sitting at a park bench or somewhere, and Miloni already knows that Rafi has written this letter to his grandmother, and she is to play the part of his fiancé, and so all that has transpired between the two scenes without us actually hearing about it, or so we don't know what he has told her, or in what fashion, but she has come to know. Similarly, the photograph itself, we never get to see, what the photograph looks like. But, in a very tender scene, Miloni tells Dadi that, this is what I saw. So it is through her interpretation and her eyes that we get to glimpse or see the photograph. So this was very charming for me, because as I'm not a film person, I'm not an expert on films, but I write. So when you write, one of the things that you're asked to be mindful of is not to tell too much, not to over describe things, but to let the reader see. You write your words in such a way that they will be able to see it without reading over descriptive details about a certain scenario that you're trying to convey. So what we call show don't tell. So I felt this film did it very well, where you're asked to see between the lines, as you would read, see between the scenes as you would read between the lines, in a text or in a book. So that sort of stood out for me. And then the flavors of what in literature is known as magical realism. There were some elements of fantasy. The very fact of these two very disparate people coming together is fantastical. It might be seen as construed as fantastical, but it's not unheard of. People from very different backgrounds and socioeconomic stratas do come together, and they have connections. But the way other elements of fantasy were kind of blended into the narrative made it very magical for me. For instance, the artifice of the letter itself that Rafi sets up, and he's listening to a film song, so he gives her that name based on that film song. And then again, when in this particular scene that you see on this slide, Miloni is by herself in the taxi, and there is a song going on the stereo, and that is Tumne Mujhe Dekha, which incidentally was sung by Mohammed Rafi. So that kind of draws her attention. So harking back also to an older Hindi film song for that, and the very fact that we are going back in time, where Rafi is looking for a Parsi home factory for making Campa Cola, and uh, those all those elements, sort of made this part fantasy, part reality, but very credible. Despite being seeming a little far fetched, they have been conveyed in a very credible way. So that sort of made it a little special for me. Then we heard in the synopsis that this is a love letter to the city, where two people come and form the unique bond. So the city itself comes across as a very strong character in the film, because all its different shades, its underbelly is shown, its tourist spots are shown, its nice areas. So it captures Bombay or Mumbai in all its different elements, and there is a constant background of ambient. It starts from the very beginning. Even as the credits roll, we hear the sound of a train, so you can immediately map that to the city itself. So if the city is a character, then all these ambient noises of the train, of traffic, of crowds, they're probably its dialogues. So that also is something that comes across. Now the social fabric of Rafi and his universe is not done briefly in this film. And this is where the disparity between the two characters is really brought to life by focusing a lot on the physical dwellings of this character. And we are shown that he this is where he lives, but it's not just the physical location itself, it's also the people, the neighbors, the roommates. For instance, when his Dadi has stopped taking her medicines because she wants to see him married, the entire neighborhood knows. They probably have come to know even before Rafi himself has learned about his grandmother, stopping her medicines. And then everybody, so it's almost like a village kind of, this, trend taking place, where all your neighbors are from the same area, where you come from, and they have this social bonding with you. And so that has been highlighted. The Hovel itself is full of character, and it's not without its own charms, despite it being it probably would be a very suffocating and difficult place to live in. But there is so much of warmth because of the people who inhabit it. They make it livable. And even find moments of unburdening their day in this place. And similarly, the economics of migrant life have been portrayed again through subtle hints. We hear Rafi telling his friend that Dadi is coming by a train which will take 3 days to come to the city. So we know that it's not going to be a quick thing. Then Dadi makes a very big deal to Miloni that Rafi's chacha, his uncle, used to be a very well-known compounder, and if Rafi had studied, he would have also become a compounder. And she gives her some silver jewelry wrapped in old newspaper. Then we see that he at one point shares with Miloni that, when they were young, he and his siblings, Dadi, how she would distract them, with jokes and funny stories during their mealtime, so that they forgot their hunger. So, so all the but the economic background of this person is revealed in small details like this. Uh, and so there is room for a lot of tension in this film, because there is so much of disparity and so little in common between the two characters that there's a full blown chance of this kind of exploding and not working out or whatever. But the tension has been captured again kind of subtly in both motion and in stillness. So for instance, in this scene where the two of them are sitting next to each other in a taxi, this happens right after Miloni has encountered her teacher on the road and, kind of forces herself off him, and then they both come and sit inside the taxi. We see the camera moves from her face to Rafi's face in turns as they speak to each other. They're not shown together. So she is asking him, "Are you okay?" And he says, "Yes, I am okay." So it just keeps switching between the two of them. So we know that they've just come out of a very kind of tense and anxious situation, and that's kind of captured in this rapid the movement of the camera between their faces. And then there is also one scene in which Miloni is at her home. She is at her desk, with all her study material, and we see her reflection on a glass on the cabinet next to her. So we see two like faces of her at the same time in the same frame, and that is the scene where she's wrestling with the thought of meeting this person called Chintan, and she's probably in two minds about it. So that's kind of another example of tension, but it's a still kind of a shot. There's not a lot of movement, but then there are this person herself and then her reflection. So it's caught in that mode. The other aspect was, how the dialogues have been incorporated in the film. We see Rafi and Miloni, they're both talk in soft, low tones, where compared to this grandmother who is loud and gregarious, and it's a big contrast. The pitch at which they talk. Miloni is, in fact, it's sometimes difficult to hear what she's saying. It's so soft. But even Rafi, they speak in low tones. So we see this sort of a rural versus urban contrast, where the city bred or people who have come and lived in the city have learned to become have a little soft in their tones, and this person from the village is open, gregarious, and she has nothing to hide. She speaks her mind and she says it clearly. That was something I noticed. And the film is open-ended, so we don't really know what happens to these two characters, and if they are in a romantic relationship, or if this is just an act of kindness on Miloni's part, that she's helping out this person in need, or she's just humoring his grandmother because that would make her happy. But we see some. We are able to get some hints or clues that she has at least developed trust and faith in this person, that trust him enough that she suggests that they will meet a second time, when after she has first met his grandmother, she is the one who says, so tomorrow we meet at the same time, at the same place. So she suggests they can meet again. She goes to the place where they live. She forces herself off her teacher and, very deliberately joins Rafi to go with him. So she makes that choice. And finally we see that, she touches his hand inside the car. So these are all probably signs that, she has developed some feelings. We are not sure, whether that is the case or not, but, there can be inferences that, this person has at least seen, the genuineness or the sincerity, and she has some emotional connection. And finally, on top of everything else that the film conveys, to me it was also about finding oneself, because Miloni as a character has evolved, from the first scene to the last. Uh, she's this very reticent, shy person who will not even, say anything to protest something she does not like. She will just give in to anybody's requests and so on. But the moment when she tells Dadi that, what about the photograph attracted her, or why she came into this relationship with Rafi, that dialogue was very telling, I thought, because she says, in the photograph I did not see myself, I saw someone else. That person was happier than me and she was prettier than me. So she has found herself in a way that she did not probably even think of. But, this other person, through his work, has captured that side of her, and made her recognize that in herself. So we see that, she has sort of found herself in a new way. And this is, I think we are all familiar that, there are elements in us, there are probably gifts and talents that we have that we don't even recognize, and it takes another person sometimes to see that in us, and make us aware of that. So that is one. And she is taking a stand. She has rejected Chintan. So, we see her coming into her own, coming out of the shadows of other people, and coming into her own by the time the film ends. And Yeah, so that was sort of, how I saw it, and how I interpreted the film. But yeah, I would love to hear what you all felt, and, can have a discussion probably if there is time.
Yeah, thank you very much, Bhaswati. That
Should I
was,
stop?
yeah, you can stop sharing screen.
Okay. Okay.
Yeah, that's done. Yeah. Yeah, thank you very much. That was a really wonderful, introduction to the film, and you have raised several issues, interesting ones, and I think there is a lot that we can talk about. So, would anyone like to raise a question, or you have a comment? Yes, would
Yeah.
anyone like to?
I would like to say,
Yes, yes, Aruna, please go ahead.
yeah. Miss, you were just saying that at the end, the slide said finding oneself. Yeah. So actually, the photograph, the name of the film, and also as a photograph, is basically finding yourself. In the sense, what I mean, sometimes when you look at your photographs, you always say, uh, I mean, I'm a Telugu person, I would say, Ayo, nenu itla lenu. That means to say, oh, I'm not like this at all. Who took this photograph? Either I'm so too good, or I'm dark or fat or short. So the photograph makes us look at ourselves. Any photograph for that matter. It's not about when you're young or old or anything. Any photograph for that instant, if you look at it, there are certain comments. Sometimes my husband would say, oh, this is my best photograph. In my entire life, I didn't have such a good photograph. Suddenly he'll say, he'll pick up a photograph and say that. So any photograph, when you look at it, it's almost looking at yourself and thinking, what are all the things that I'm seeing here? Sometimes, I'm not saying every time you do that. So the name itself, when I was seeing the film and was just watching these small things, of course, you did a beautiful analysis. I'm not that capable, but some sense of it I could draw. And I felt that, yes, this film is about how the girl sees herself, and the photograph is one of the mediums, and also her experiences in the film, meeting some person who was totally at a tangent, totally opposite to her, and seeing what was the goodness in him, what was the gentleness with which he could come through, and his how did she gain the trust? It's because of the how do you say this, the way he presented himself without any uh, artifice. Very openly he said, and as you very well said, there was no dialogue which we could hear when he explained his case. It is only through her words saying that she knows about it. So this journey itself sort of showed me that, okay, this is about this girl, how she becomes very slowly. In the first scene, they talk about the girl as if she's not there. The family talks about her. She won so many prizes. She did this, she that, as if she's not there. And they take Miloni's name and talk, and she's quietly eating or just like that. Slowly, she comes to a stage where she says no to this Chintan. So that transformation sort of I could see, and it was also, it made me think of the photograph, how we comment on ourselves when we look at a photograph. So that's what I wanted to add.
I completely agree with you. I think that's very well put. Yeah, we see also, as you said, the transformation that she's leaning more towards people who she would otherwise not even interact with,
Yeah.
including the woman who works for them at their house, Rampyari. She becomes more of a confidant, and she shares things with her, and they become friends. She probably can confide more in her than to her family members. So yeah, so that was quite interesting.
That was, yeah.
Yeah. Another very interesting thing I thought was, there's a reference to Miloni as winning a lot of awards for acting in her school days.
Yes.
In one of the many scenes around the dining table, the other family members mentioned that, and in a way, she's actually playing a role. Like she is acting. So that acting on the stage and getting awards for it seems to continue in her life, because she's playing the role of Rafi's fiance to please the grandmother.
Yeah,
So
and they also say that she wanted to become an actor. She was
yes,
probably dissuaded from doing so, but that was her childhood ambition. So you're right. She, here is now a situation where she kind of gets to
she gets to
live
act.
that.
Right.
Yeah, and at one point there's one scene where a taxi, a cab driver is asking Rafi, "Are you guys both into theater? Do you both do
Yes.
acting?"
Rama,
And he says yes, and the driver says, "Oh, that's what I suspected, because a girl like her
how
with
you,
you." So yeah, so I think that was another very interesting point, that she wanted to act, and here is her opportunity.
yes, Geeta, what you said is correct, because she's enacting a role here. It's a real life role for her. It's not
Yeah.
a stage play, or else she really playing the role of somebody, and then whom she is not actually. She is not, but she's playing this role of that Noori, that imagined Noori. Yes,
Yes.
that is true. Very interesting point. Yes.
Yeah. Anyone else would like to come up with a question or a comment? Yes, Kalpalata, please go ahead.
Yeah, Batra here has tried to create poetry, and it is very obvious. And this film has a rhythm. and there are frames in the films which are like photographs. It looks like a photograph, but I kind of faced problems in believing this restrained romance between two classes. And the first was for me, Miloni is too bland to be someone who has there is no expressions, she has no enthusiasm, and still she is topping in CA exam. So it is hard to believe that someone so disinterested in the subject and still she's excelling in her subject. And it is also, and it has already been discussed here, it was very hard to believe also how Rafi, a stranger, is so easily he convinces Miloni to play the prospective bride for his grandmother. And actually, I wanted to see that scene, and for me, that scene was important. And of course, Rafi makes Miloni very, very special, but I felt that it doesn't reflect on Miloni's face. The expression remains same throughout the film, and there is the awkwardness between the two continues throughout the film. There is no change as such I saw in Miloni, and uh, she is so uncomfortable in the cinema hall scene. She seems so uncomfortable, but finally I did not see, if she is so uncomfortable, then why she is going to the cinema hall with him? The purpose is not clear. The only character for me who brings life to the film is the character of the grandmother. She is very vivacious, and the end scene also, for me it was very clear that Miloni has made her mind to break the barrier, to cross the barrier of class difference. But this idea again does not come out clearly, and there are minimal dialogues. The dialogues are very short. A lot of silence is used in the film. There are Batra has used various medium shots, and there I really liked the frame of feet being used. It is the frame where the maid comes to serve in the dining table, and this is what I gathered from the film. Thank you.
Thank you, Kalpalata. Bhaswati, would you like to respond?
Yeah, so where you spoke about, her Miloni's reticence and that being a problem to her, being credible as a topper and so on. I felt that was done very well. As an introvert, that's exactly what it is like. What the world sees or sees you as and what you are can be radically different. I was always this extremely shy person in the class that the teachers would dismiss as having nothing to work with and so on. And then my results would tell a different story. So it was very different for me. My mother was probably the only person who believed in me, because to the world I was this person who wouldn't come out, who wouldn't talk, and I was probably exactly the same way. And yet that is not reflective of whether they are enjoying their studies or not. It's just an aspect of your personality, and some people are like that, and some people are more outgoing and more expressive. But I think that is what has been tried to capture here by the director, that you can have a person like this who is excelling, and there is no way to tell whether she enjoys her studies or not. It's she doesn't reveal either way. So that is one. And I agree with you. The use of the feet, especially to again illustrate tension, I thought was very well done. I felt like that is probably where the physical aspect of it kind of shows through, that the tingling of the feet, and when you're kind of wrestling with your thoughts and so on. As for the other aspects of it, as to why she went to the cinema hall, I don't think she expected to experience what she did. She's doing a lot of these things out of the kindness of her heart. That is very clear, that she wants to help out, and so she's doing it as a compassionate gesture. So it's probably in that refrain that she goes to the film hall, but it's obviously something that she's not used to, and it's very clear that Rafi is very used to a mouse walking over your feet, and he tells her that this is nothing. You can get used to this. So I don't think that is something that you anticipate. A lot of the things she doesn't know how they will turn out. The meeting with the grandmother, the going to his hovel. The film hall theater is the one unpleasant experience she has. We don't see too many other unpleasant experiences, where she is accompanying him to various places. So that is one, and it's that's an important scene to show that she's kind of getting a taste for what she's in for. If she's actually feeling drawn towards this person, then this is something she might have to get used to. So that's an important scene. It's not all positive, and it's not all sunshine and rainbows all the way. So we get a glimpse of that. So I think that was important to bring about the differences between the two characters. But it's we all come from different sensibilities, so the subtlety of it worked for me, but I can see why it will be a problem, for many viewers.
Can I say a few things here?
Yes, Aruna, go ahead.
Yeah. Just now, Bhaswati was saying that earlier also she said this. There was this girl is doing things out of kindness or to help somebody out. Um, hello? Hello?
We can hear you.
Yeah. So my thing is, yes, maybe she's doing it with that, but I also feel um, the how do you say, the other part of Miloni. There are two parts definitely. On one side, she was wanting to become an actress, as Geeta pointed out. She was dissuaded, or she was forced or persuaded to take up how do you say, her studies and all that, to excel academically. Maybe there was a rebel in her which was trying to come out, and she took this as a challenge, as something totally different, which her parents would not accept definitely, and it was out of her genre, totally something which was not expected of her. She would have done it also as a challenge to herself. Let me do this, like a child rebelling against too many restrictions and too sedate a life. Sometimes your heart also feels everything is going by rule, day to day. Let me do something different. That kind of thing comes to each of us, I suppose, at some. Maybe she took that moment. That moment was, how do you say, it just clicked like that when she must have been approached by this character to say that maine aapka photo de, etc., whatever. So I felt that she was looking at a different aspect of it, as a, how do you say, protest against her stay, like Kalpalata said, very staid and very ordinary, very, there was nothing there, no spark. Did she look for that here? That also was a thing which was going through my mind when this girl was there. And the taxi driver thing, when say आप लोग ड्रामा स्कूल से हो क्या, and then he says इसलिए मैंने सोचा ऐसी लड़की आपके साथ, that wonder in his voice, that made me think, oh, is this girl also looking at this kind of a adventurous kind of a thing? So that's what I wanted. It's not just kindness, I feel this is also what part of that girl's thing, which temperament which made her do this.
I think that's a very good point, Aruna, and something that I did not think of. But now that you point it out, I think this is an inherent characteristic of an introvert. That
Exactly.
they're constantly dismissed by a lot of people, if not in words, then by perception, or by way of how they come across. So there is an inner rebellion, which is not always conscious, but it's subconsciously there inside you. And you do want to prove to the world that I am not this bland and a person, without any feelings of my own, or without any intelligence of my own, because they're often seen to be even lacking in intelligence, probably because they don't express anything. So I think there is this feeling of wanting to rebel, or show to the world that okay, there is, I can be different, and I also have another side that you probably are not aware of. So
And
I
to
think that's a very good point. Yeah, to oneself as well. Yes.
Yeah. Anyone else?
Geeta, can I?
Yeah, sure, Nikhila. Yeah, Nikhila and then Bhagyalakshmi.
Okay, let Bhagyalakshmi speak. She's come after a long time. Bhagyalakshmi, go ahead.
Thank you, ma'am. Actually, the movie seems to bring a kind of nostalgia and romanticizing the notions of photograph, past, letters, platonic love, songs, searching for cola, etc. Even the ending brings that nostalgia in which they are together. And she's both modern and traditional. And the stereotypes of a Hindu-Muslim love story is questioned here. Here, Rafi admires her and calls her madam, but the other two are different from him while treating her. And it also seems that the movie is showing, it talks about class difference clearly. Because high class, low class life, their way of talking, food, everything is clearly differentiated in the movie. That's all. Thank you. I feel like that.
Yeah, Nikhila, would you like to go ahead?
Yeah. What is, I mean, with this kind of new cinema, I think increasingly we find what is called this character driven kind of films rather than plot driven. So that's why it's not like, something happens. So if you're expecting something to happen in this film, well, there's very little that happens. Even the narrative closure, so to speak, is going to seem unsatisfactory if that is our expectation, with which we approach a film like this. So it's more like a character study, and that is very, very interesting. Bhaswati, you mentioned that she is an introvert. In film, even when characters are introverts, somehow as viewers of the film, we expect to know more about the characters than other characters do. Here, the dissatisfaction, so to speak, is also because we don't know. I mean, how is it that we don't understand her motives? How is it there's nothing to tell us more? So this demand that we have for characters to act with motives, to explain themselves to us, whether they explain themselves to other characters or not, to explain themselves to us, here I think it beats all those expectations that we have as viewers, which is why all that we get is these characters acting in particular situations, and those actions are tremendously ambiguous. So we don't really know what to make of, for instance, the final scene. We don't know, for instance, when she goes into his room and she finds all those photographs lying around there, what does she make of it? Is she repelled by it? Does she like it? As you said in your presentation, there's very little in terms of her facial expression to go by. So the usual cues with which we do a character study, are also kind of absent. So just taking this at face value and not having enough information. So it was very, very interesting, at one level for me to respond to this film. Also, I thought that it's an interesting kind of an experiment where the characters in some ways are also trying to respond to each other outside of their milieu. Once they are pushed, put back into their milieu, maybe in her, in the place where she is, like for instance, in the encounter with the teacher. It's so tension filled. It's not where the bond that was there between these two characters can no longer work when the world as such, or her world as such, enters here. Similarly, at the theater or in his own room. So it's like, is it possible for us to look at two characters, and it's like an experiment that the movie is conducting. Is it possible to in some ways take them out of their milieu, make them respond to each other as if the milieu did not matter? But of course it does. It seems like the film's interest works in this direction. Also, everything is so low and understated, low key, understated. The loud dress, one of your slides showed that. So the yellow dress versus the pink dress, and finally the pink is chosen. So again, the sense of what would it look like if she wore those kind of ostentatious jewel, the anklets for or the colorful salwar, why everything is so muted in her world, whereas this world is so different. So it's also, there is one gaze, and her gaze, towards this world, which seems more authentic to her than the one, or more intimate to her than the one that she knows of. The only way, for instance, that she can know what her parents are thinking is by eavesdropping on their conversation, and she is the subject of that conversation, and yet it's all going on, behind her back, as it were. So this world may seem more authentic. So what I find interesting is not so much, I don't think there is very much of, it's not an act of kindness as such, I would think, as much as what she is learning about herself through this kind of circuitous route. So through interacting with another milieu, seeing herself there and seeing how people there respond to her, and placing herself out of her milieu to see what comes of this. Of course, there's no osmosis, there's no large scale change that happens. It's all very, very, it's very fleeting, I would think, for anything large to happen. So there's nothing large that happens. It's a film of understatement and really minimal, and very interesting shifts, if there is anything at all in these characters. That's all. Thank you very much.
Yeah. Anyone else?
Yeah, I would like to pitch in.
Alok, please go ahead.
One feeling while watching that movie, throughout the movie I was very tense, because I viewed the movie completely with obviously social angles, economical angles, and there was this tension that was running throughout the movie, and which was not the tension that both the actors had, very surprisingly. So yeah, I completely agree with Nikhila ma'am's point that probably the movie in the movie. Sorry, I just got a call. Am I audible now?
Yes,
Yes.
you are.
Yeah. So probably the movie is not speaking to the audience that much, and that is why somehow we feel I don't know, matlab, there is an absence of dialogue between the audience and the characters themselves. But then again, I think uh yeah, am I audible?
Yeah,
Yes.
yes, please go ahead.
I'm just getting calls again and again, and that is why I'm asking. So yeah, but I think the characters themselves are very sure of the relation or the bond that they have together. So for example, even though Miloni eats that what do you call that, ice candy, yeah. uh,
Kalakhatta, yeah.
yeah, and even after that, Nawazuddin Siddiqui brings bhajia from the street, and she's still okay with that. Simultaneously, they go to a movie theater, and she somehow feels discomfort, or she says that let's go to some other place, and then both of them agrees to it. So I think both the actors are both these characters are absolutely clear that they trust each other, and that trust basically surpasses everything. So probably the story is between these two, and we are it's like that we are the others, and these two are the central premise of the whole movie, who are very dependent on each other. They trust each other. What kind of bond they share, it's I don't know, it's not very clear through the whole movie, but it's very important that for me, what strikes me is the fact that they trust each other more than anything else. Yeah.
It's interesting to me, Alokik, that you said that you felt the tension, that the film somehow is not able to reflect, but that you felt it. So I guess it does succeed in some way to bring about that conflict, or if it is felt, and each of us would have responded to the film differently. So there will be as many reactions, but I feel that if it was able to stir that reaction in you, then probably it is a mark of the film's success in some way, that you felt there is some bristling tension in this film, or
Absolutely.
or an undercurrent that that.
Yeah, so not only on economic lines, but probably on even on religious lines. So for example, the दादी exclaims कि यार ये मुझे पता चल गया था कि ये पहले ही मुलाकात से कि ये हिंदू है, और ये दूसरे धर्म की है. So and even twice I think the taxi people said twice कि यार तेरा रंग इतना काला है और मुझे नहीं समझ में आया कि तुम्हें वो कैसे मिल गई. So on many lines there is this absolute tension that is going on in the movie, but it's very clear that these two people are just beyond all of that, probably. Yeah.
Yeah, anyone else? I think that quiet unfolding of the relationship is very characteristic of Batra's style itself. Even his other movies like Our Souls at Night or Lunchbox. Uh, Love for Batra is not that very dramatic or loud. It is rather kind of a very slow unfolding, and like Bhaswati, you said, it's ultimately about understanding oneself. And then through the understanding of the self, there is the understanding of the other. And whether this actually leads to, a more permanent relationship or not, we don't know. And there, I think it's quite telling that Bombay cinema is very central to this movie. There is that in so many ways Hindi cinema is very important to this film. The songs, and then the fact that he chose Noori by hearing that song, and also his comment on the way all Hindi movies end. In the movie he says that, that I know how it ends, so we don't even have to watch it till the end. So probably the director is trying to say that there's no need to really end this film because it is known. There is this boy and girl and the parents are going to object, and that's how he understands the way Hindi cinema, the way Hindi films end. And probably this movie also would end that way. So there's no need to overstate it, and for that reason you have that kind of an open ended narrative.
Or rather, the film is saying that the
Yeah, and
ending
also
does
the
not
way
matter.
I felt.
Sorry,
I
sorry.
think Nikhila is saying something.
No, I was just saying that, or rather, the film is saying that the ending does not matter.
Does not matter. Yeah,
Right.
right. Yeah, Bhaswati, you were saying something?
Yeah, I also felt that, so these are such two very different characters there's very little common between the two of them. So how do you bring them closer? So that I thought he did a good job by finding some common ground. There has to be something that you can meet, with. So they both have, so the trope of memory has been used to bring about that. This girl has given up on drinking cola because it reminds of her grandfather who used to bring her Campa Cola. And similarly, Rafi eats kulfi uh, at the end of the month because his father always used to buy them kulfi at the end of the month. So they both connect with a departed family member's memories of how they made things special for them. So there are these small things that kind of bring them closer despite the vast gulf that really separates them. Common ground has been found, where the two of them can actually connect and share something that would make sense to both of them.
Yeah. Okay. Someone who has not yet spoken, would you like to speak? There's Samvartha, Fanida, Nikhil. Yes, Nikhil,
I
please
ask a
go
question.
ahead.
I like the way subtle hints are given now and then in the movie, and the viewer has to be very attentive to receive the meaning of that. So, my question is, you mentioned during your presentation that you love to write and you do write. So, um, is there anything in the movie that, as an author, you would like to change, and any point you find to be uh, a weaker one in the whole plot structure and storyline?
I actually really enjoyed the film. I watched it twice. Once for this discussion, once when I watched it for the first time, and I found it interesting that the film has also been written by the director. So I did also see it as a written work, not just as a film, because it's also a story that he has written, and he
Mhm.
has chosen to tell it in a particular way. So he has very deliberately, as a writer, withheld some information, and that to me was interesting, because in my writing, if I see the the whole trajectory of my writing from when I began until now, I see myself moving to this kind of a space where less is more, where I want to convey a lot by using fewer words, and that is the kind of story that I find appealing. So that's what I probably want to incorporate in my own writing. So I found it interesting that he wrote the story as well.
Yes, he is also the script writer and story writer. So, do you think it's told as a narrative would be told, I mean, in a cinematic way? Uh, do you think he has slightly modified his original story because that is what the cinema would require?
Yeah, so I think in cinema you have a bigger opportunity to show more without really telling or spelling out all the details, because you have the power of the visual to convey a lot of things. And I think that is one of the parts where the criticism about Miloni's character is also stemming from, that her expression is same throughout. We don't really see a lot of variation in the way she is
She shows herself.
speaking, or she is even reacting. But it's in the gestures. It's not so much of what comes across in her face, but it's in the, as you said, you have to be so attentive throughout. For
Yeah.
instance, even that scene that Nikhila mentioned, where she has suddenly discovered all these photographs from under the bed in Rafi's room while he has gone to bring the bhajia. Uh, she is kind of startled to see all her photographs, but the moment she hears his footsteps, she puts it right back there, which tells us of her approval, that she's not opposed to
Offended.
him keeping these photographs. So it's in this very, it is probably deeply understated that you have to pick up every little reference and you have to be constantly attentive. But I think that was the point of this character, that you cannot infer a lot from the way you see her as, but it's from the tiny gestures that you have to make inferences as to what she might be thinking.
Yes. She's almost a mute person, and then even that consistency of a characterization throughout, like when she asks or makes room for Nawazuddin to sit next to her in the bus, and that's also so silently. So it's consistent throughout, and that's so beautiful. I liked it. So thank you for introducing this movie.
You're welcome.
Yeah, anyone else would like to come in at this point? Anyone?
Yeah,
Yeah, Arun,
can
please
I?
go ahead.
Hello?
Yeah, we can hear you.
Yeah,
Oh,
please
okay,
go
okay,
ahead.
okay. Thank you. Yeah, so yeah, this is a very quaint, beautiful little film. And at the very beginning, I found it very similar to another film which I had seen, a film by Vincent Gallo called Buffalo 66. Wherein this guy gets out of jail, and to get his parents off his back, he suddenly randomly picks up a girl and takes her home to convince his parents that he is settled and like he is leading a good life and all that. So but then later on everything changed, so not so similar. Yeah, so there are so many themes in this film that I found interesting. Sometimes it even felt a bit cliched as a film in the big, as a film in the life in the big city kind of genre. About solitude, loneliness, and all those things. But like Batra captured all those sentiments beautifully. Yeah, and another thing about this character, this female character. Yeah, like you were talking about she being an introvert, but I was thinking more than being an introvert, she's also uh, shown as a victim or product of patriarchy. You see, like patriarchy, the film reeks of patriarchy, with it's like it cuts through classes. Even the dadi, she seems sweet and all, but even she she talks about husband earning less than the wife and all that. Like she's concerned about that. And this girl, she always has this air of quiet resignation about her. She's not assertive. Her parents are making decisions about her life, uh, deciding on her marriage. And at the beginning, when she is at that textile shop, the mother is picking out, whatever color that she likes for the daughter. She's not really asking her whether she likes it or not. And by contrast, when she goes to shop with Dadi actually asks her what is your favorite color, and she is kind of lost because she's not used to being asked to choose. Things are kind of done for her by others. So that was interesting. Um, and yeah, I don't know. Like she as the film progresses, she kind of becomes enamored with this idea of the village, the provincial and all. The girl, she's asking about the village life. How will it feel like to live there? She's interacting with the maid. She's asking Dadi about it and all that. I didn't know what to make of it. Is it genuine interest about all that, or is it like an upper class fixation, or like fetishism uh, of the other, of the pastoral life or of the provincial life, just to experience it as a tourist, as a for some time, to experience it and come back. So that was I was kind of doubtful of that. And yeah, the very end of the film, like someone else mentioned, it doesn't really end there. It's an open ending. And it's somewhat like the other film of Batra, the Lunchbox, wherein the film actually, yeah, it's very similar to the Lunchbox, the ending, because of its open ending. And I thought the film, uh, continues playing in that non-diegetic space. Even in Lunchbox, that happens. The story doesn't stop there. Film stops. The story doesn't stop. Yeah, yeah. All in all, it was a very interesting film. Yeah, thank you.
Thank you, Arun. Bhaswati, would you like to respond to that?
Yeah, just one aspect where you spoke about, her interest in the village life, and, how I think it was an attempt to shed a light on how far removed or alienated the urban person on an average is from this other India. It was probably just a nudge to that part of the audience that, uh, we have no clue. A majority of our people live in villages, but we don't know what their day-to-day life is. So that's why she's shown to take a genuine interest in what happens. So what do you do in the evening? And she says, there's load shedding, so there's power cut every day, and so we just sit through the night and whatever. So and then she tells Chintan jokingly that I'd like to. When he asks her that what is it that you want to do, she says, I want to be in a village. And he says, what will you do there? She says, I will do kheti, and then I'll fall asleep on the field itself. So it has a romanticized notion of what the village life is, but I think the point here is that we are totally cut off from that aspect of Indian life. So it's probably just a gentle nudge in that direction, I thought.
Uh, yeah,
Yes,
when we
Sandeep.
look at the yes, when we look at the evolution of these two characters, the we have to understand that the discovery of the self is not possible without the engagement with the other. So as it happens in the case of Miloni, that she is trying to at least she is developing some kind of interest in knowing the villagers, how they live, what do they do during the daytime, what do they do during the evening time, and she is taking now more interest in knowing about the other also in the general sense, and also in the sense that Rafi is there, the other for her. So when she goes to watch this film, there is a rat which troubles her, and she is disturbed by that, which is shown in the film twice. But when we remember this statement by this doctor who says that the longer I live, the more pain I have, but the longer I live, the pain hurts less. So what happens that probably there is a hint to the audience that she understands this, that once you go there, okay, first time you will feel this kind of problem. It happens in the case when she eats street food also, and again she is eating the street food. So in a way she is not following the advice of her father, but rather the advice of the doctor, who says that it develops immunity. So when Rafi brings that pakoda, then she is willingly, eating. So she doesn't say no. And on the other hand, Rafi also, initially he says that, he's like Kulfi. He's hard, and he's making fun of his friend Zakir Bhai is softy. That's a joke. So softy means somebody who is emotional, sentimental, who is soft at heart. But interestingly, towards the end, you will see that this kulfi seller, he says that, I'm planning to, again, as this film drops hints at several places, and you have to understand it like that. It doesn't, in fact, it shows less than what it tells, and it doesn't show that much. So this kulfi seller says that I am trying to shift to this softy business. That indicates that this character Rafi is moving from kulfi to softy. That also indicates that he is probably more interested again in the other, and in a romantic relationship. So the discovery of the self for both of them, for Miloni and for Rafi, happens with the engagement of with the other, with the help of engagement with the other. So she is like Miloni is trying to communicate more with Ram Pyari, and in fact we have to know that we were talking about assertion, the self-assertion, like she is rejecting this boy, but where does this idea come from? This idea comes from Ram Pyari. She says that, I have heard that Sahib and Mem Sahib, they were talking that this boy had, he was very fat and he had lost weight recently, so he can put on weight again. So that's a hint again. The film says, okay, this is the reason you give. The film is not telling like that, but we have to understand that is Ram Pyari is telling, look, you are going to see the boy, fine, no problem, but give this reason, okay, that he can put on weight. And this is the reason exactly given by Miloni. So again, this kind of assertion and this kind of formation of the self, which is called Bildung, that, which is not possible without the engagement with the other. And we see this in both these characters. Again, Rafi is trying to open company, Campa Cola company. That is again his commitment with the other. He is trying to please Miloni. As far as the end is concerned, the last sequence is is exactly the repetition of a sequence which has already happened in the film. It's a repetition. There is nothing new in it except for something which was not shown the first time. Now it is shown. What happens after the movement of the rat? She's a bit disturbed and she comes out. So that part is shown the second time. And so the end is exactly taken from the middle. If you see, the whole film is 1 hour 49 minutes. And when she is in the cinema, when the first time when we see both of them in the cinema, it is at the 56th minute. This is just the middle of the film. So that way it is very innovative. Then after that, what happens? That is up to the audience to how we want it to end. Okay. But otherwise, if we go back again to the 56th minute when they are watching the film for the first time, which is shown to the audience, in just after that, in the next scene, she is shown to be disturbed in a pensive mood. Okay, so she might have been thinking about this difference in the class, that somebody here is not worried about the movement of the rat in the cinema, whereas for her, because she is a bit apprehensive, she asks to which cinema hall you go to watch movies. Okay, so she might not like to go in such cinemas where rats are moving scot-free. So but the film says towards the end, I mean, Rafi says that all the films end like in the same way, but the family of the father of girl will object. That is the point. Now we have seen that the grandmother has no objection, because she has said that you should start a new business. She is supportive, very supportive. She says that you should start a new business and look forward to go for a married life, and you can't just be in the same situation where you are just a photograph and you are not earning enough. Even if she knows that she is from a different religion, now she knows that she is not a Muslim, she is not Noori, but okay. So she is supportive. Now the problem may start from the girl's family. But as far as the girl is concerned, we have some hints again, which is related to the end in certain way, and also to the evolution in the character. That in the bus, that is one of the last scenes. When she is going in the bus, somebody asks her, "Is it you there in the billboard, that photograph?" And her answer is no. That means she is no longer identifying herself with that Miloni, which we saw probably in the beginning of the film. So she is changing. Now she is, either you say that she is discovering herself or she is engaging with the other, because both are the same thing for me.
Yeah, and in fact, she is dissociating more and more from her known universe. We see that she forces herself off Anmol sir. She sort of sees through his hypocrisy that he has this sense of male upper class entitlement, where he thinks he can force her to go for a coffee. He says, "You gave me the photograph," which he actually confiscated. And he says, you gave me the photograph and I still have that photograph. So she goes away from him. Then she denies that the photo on the billboard is hers. So she says to Chintan that I want to go and live in a village. She has rejected him. So she is increasingly dissociating herself from her known world, and she's adventurously stepping into this new world. Yeah, so that's a very good point.
Yeah, as you said rightly, I was also thinking about the introduction of this supernatural element, Tiwari's ghost. That's a very interesting character. We have seen this lovable, actor. It's a wonderful actor. So I was thinking that why is he introduced at this juncture? Because a ghost, you know completely about your life. Like we say, you know completely about your life only when you have lived it enough. Okay, but by the time we live our life, we die. Okay, we are no longer living. So the only way to have a complete view of life is to discover it after your death. Okay, so the ghost element. This is the ghost, you know, who has seen his life, and this is like a lesson from the past to our Rafiullah. So, and it is interesting that both of them, they say at the same time, I want to open Campa Cola business. They are saying exactly at the same time. That's a beautiful scene. So I was thinking why, you know, the Tiwari's ghost comes here, probably to gives him some suggestion, you know, to so how he can change his life. Like his own life, Tiwari, you know, he committed suicide, and probably Rafiullah doesn't have to commit suicide. He doesn't have to come to the same kind of situation where there is, you know, full of disappointment and there is no future. So in a way, it is like revising. Tiwari is revising his own life. He is, you know, and giving some sensible advice to Rafiullah. So that was a very interesting point, because otherwise this film is very realistic, and all of a sudden we find the introduction of one supernatural element.
And that was also one of the magical realism elements that I thought. I forgot to mention it in my presentation, but yeah, Tiwari's ghost, very important, and you know, sort of a reminder as to, you know, what can happen and how you can prevent that from happening. And and the use of dark brooding humor, you know, in that, the way Tiwari is first referenced by Zakir Bhai, and you know, the way his ghost shows up, there is an element of humor in that. So it's not all dark and ghostly in that sense. Sorry, I interrupted you, I think, Sanjay.
Yeah, thank you. No problem. So then I was thinking about subtitling. Interestingly, there will be a different kind of experience when you see this film with subtitles and when you know Hindi. Because I noticed that in one of the this film reviews, which is on this rogerebert.com, it was written by Nell Minogue. Okay, and where she quotes this line, which is being said by Rafi at least twice in the film. Then you know, he says in Hindi, सालों बाद जब ये फोटो आप देखेंगे तो आपको आपके चेहरे पर यही दिखाई देगी, आपके बालों में ये हवा और आपके कानों में ये हजारों लोगों की आवाजें, सब चले जाएंगे, हमेशा के लिए सब चले जाएंगे. This is the line he says twice in the film, and I look at it differently than what was presented in the subtitle. And this was the English subtitle which was quoted in that film review, which says that years from now, when you look at this photo, you will feel the sun of your face, this wind in your hair, and hear all these voices, or it will all be gone forever. And I was comparing these two. So in the English one, the suggestion is that you take this photograph, okay, I will, you know, photograph you, and you keep it as a memory. That is the English. So according to the English subtitles, the interpretation is that if you do not go for this photograph, everything will be lost. Okay, this is a plain one reading if you go through the English subtitles. But when I read the Hindi one, it gives a different and very fascinating interpretation, which says that, you know, not that everything will be lost. Okay, the sun on your face will be there, but these noises, okay, the wind, the ruffling of your hair and all that will be lost. Okay, so what will be preserved is complete silence. And this film is, for me, is about silence, about the pauses, about the unfinished sentences, about the gaps in the narrative. So he says that, you know, the noise will go away, and finally, this wind, movement of the wind through your hair, that will go away. But what will be left will be this silence, because a photograph, contrary to a video, okay, captures only silence. It excludes any kind of sound or noise or whatever you play. And in our modern life, we are, a bit hostile to the silence. When the silence comes, it is disturbing for us. So why they are not telling? Because if somebody is silent for some time, we say, "Are you sad? Is there a problem?" No, I mean, somebody can be sad. Somebody can be silent just because the person is engaging with himself or herself and is in a pensive mood, or one can be happy also. There is no need to jump all the time and declare that you are happy. You can be happy in a very calm way, in a very cool way also. So because of the subtitling, the interpretations are different. But in the Hindi one, when I see, because I understand Hindi, and it was a completely different interpretation. And when I saw the subtitles, because initially I didn't see the subtitles, when I read about this in the film review and then again went back to the subtitles, I noticed that there is a different kind of reading, which says that everything will be lost. That or is there in English. It says that or it will all be gone. Okay. But in Hindi, there is nothing like this equivalent of this or in the Hindi dialogue. So it again brings ourselves to the silence, which for me is the main theme of the film, because the film starts with all kinds of noise. You see, the first, when we watch the film, first thing which we notice is that honking in the street. Then next, snoring, creaking of the fan, okay, train, rattling, okay. So all kinds of noise are there, okay. And then we find these two characters who show an affinity with the silence. They do not speak much. They do not like to speak much, okay. So they are very comfortable with their silence. They don't have to jump around all the time and show bubbly, So initially, I was also wondering, because I was thinking about the subtitles, do we notice this all kinds of noise because subtitles are there? Because when you watch this and you immediately see the subtitles, okay, honking in the street. And that shows at one point that it is also an improvement in the subtitling, because in the initial phase, I don't think such subtitles were given in the films. Now they point out each sound, because it is meant for also people who are hard of hearing. So they will see that, okay, there is some kind of sound or there is some kind of noise. So overall, it presents also the contrast, the beginning of the film, because obviously it is metropolitan city, it is Bombay, and you cannot avoid all kinds of noise. Again, I was thinking about this film Shore in Hindi, where it starts with all kinds of noise, where Manoj Kumar has acted. So, but finally, film in a way valorizes silence at every level, at the narrative level, at also the level of when, trying to hint through the camera handling. Like you talked about the feet, when she is eating, 2-3 times we have seen that how in a very jittery way her feet are moving. Okay, that indicates that she is a bit nervous, but nothing happens. She doesn't say anything. Okay, but we feel it only through some gestures, and so many beautiful gestures in the film. They are all hinting something, but they are not telling you explicitly. Yeah, thank you. That's all.
Thank you, Sanjay. Anyone else would like to speak? No? Is that all? Nikhila, shall we wrap? Okay, Tarkeshwar, yeah, please go ahead.
Yeah, if no one else is there,
yes, please,
I will
please.
I think the discussion went on in the right direction from the beginning. What I would feel is that this film is about photograph versus film, or I should put it in the way uh, a description versus narration. Uh, so it's narration is basically action in time. So yes, there is an action, there is a time, there is a movement, there is a plot, but it not interested in moving the plot. It is not interested in uh, moving towards the narrative closure or conclusion. So in that sense, narrative is not given importance. It stops here and there. So the stop, where it stops, there it becomes a kind of a poetic moment. So it ruminates on that particular moment, and it jumps whenever it has to move. Sometimes it doesn't run, it jumps into something else. So it's moment to moment, and it's very intelligent in the sense that it allows you to fill up the gaps. It knows what the audience know, and they will be able to fill it up. That's why we are all able to fill up those things and then bring in our own life experiences or our philosophical readings to uh, understand uh, these moments that are presented to us. Uh, Even in relationship, it is focusing on the relationship between these two and the others who come now and then, and it is happening in a context. Yes, there is a class distinction that is shaping this relationship or that is impinging on this relationship. There's also an angle of uh, religion or that is impinging on it, and from your experience, your discourse, you can bring in the angle of love jihad too. That's a different issue, but it knows you can bring it that. But the film or the photograph is not interested in that. It is interested in freezing the moment and ruminating on it. So it gives details to it. Even if you look at the camera angles, certain moments, they're trying to look at the details which are not noticed unless the camera positions in that particular place. So it is not interested in moving the narrative. It knows that the story of uh, two people falling in love between from different classes, what happens to them and how it happens. So it's more interested in those moments. So the moments, the photograph, that is more important. So even at the end, it doesn't bother about what is going to happen and what is your past. What they are doing at that point of time is more important. So yes, there is a background, the class, the religion, everything is there, and the city, which we can talk about. But the film is not commenting on any of those things. They all come as a background. If you want, you can discuss it. But the film per se is not saying anything about it. Because if you're saying that class is more important here, the class is more comes strikes to strikes at us, not in the relationship between these two. As somebody pointed out, these two are not bothered about it. They're interested in only about their relationship. But the class comes in a contrast between the maid and uh, Saloni. She always calls her Didi, and the age difference that we see on visually on screen and the dialogues, the contrast between the two is really a contrast that strikes you. And yes, there is a change in her attitude towards the maid slowly, but it is not to transcend the class. It is to understand this relationship in a better sense. She is using her as a kind of a prop or as a kind of file uh, to get information to make sense of what is happening to her in that relationship. So in that sense, yes, everything is there. We can talk about it, but it wants to freeze certain moments and ruminate on it. So in that sense, it becomes poetic here and there. Uh, so it is not social realist. Yes, there are. You can say that there are some elements of magical realism, but more than that, it is not interested in narration. It is interested in the description of a moment and how differently you can see that moment is more is it something that they're trying to focus our attention on through these camera angles? Thank you.
Thank you, Tarkeshwar. Would you like to respond, Bhaswati? Or
Yeah, no, that's a very interesting way to look at it. And as I said, I'm not an expert on cinema in any sense. So I am learning so much from you all.
well, about experts on cinema, I think we are all experts on cinema in a way, each in her own way.
No, I mean, the technical aspects
Yeah.
of it and yeah, so on. So I've not studied or
Anyone else? So, Nikhila, should we wrap it up then if there are no more comments, questions?
Yeah, I thought Paniraj sir, Samvarta didn't have much to say about this film.
Yeah, I was asking. I, in fact, mentioned their names,
Yeah.
but since they did not respond. Yeah, Samvarta. Yeah, Samvarta, please go ahead.
No, I mean, hello, everyone.
Yeah.
The reason I did not respond, I mean, say anything because I mean, I don't know. I mean, this film affected me emotionally very much. I had gone to see the film first day, first show, and this film ran in Manipal for a week, and in 1 week I watched it 4 times. Uh, yeah, I mean,
you should have done this instead of
no,
me.
no. But I mean, I'm speaking of 2018, 2019 March, and to this day, I have revisited this film several times, and I mean, I can't say why it affects me so much. That I mean, I can't unpack it, but I mean, I have some thoughts around this film, and I think. There is another film which actually to me runs along the same lines, and I don't know whether it's my inference of the film or me projecting my thoughts into the film. There is this other film by Shujit Sarkar called October, which again for me, I mean, because I'm particularly interested in the idea of loneliness and love and how that actually kind of operates. I think these two films, I mean, in the recent times, kind of stood out very much to me. And actually, I mean, to share my thoughts about the film, I'll actually kind of come from what actually I mean, Sanjay sir was mentioning about the Tiwari. That was my favorite character, and I was very thrilled by when the title card they said the copyright is Tiwari ke bhoot. I just love that. Uh, See, Tiwari, I mean, commits suicide because he could not find the love that he wanted to, and that's one of the reason why actually he kind of comes and kind of awakens. And it reminded me, I mean, interestingly, Tiwari is a ghost, and it very interestingly it reminded me of a film by Kieslowski, Red, where actually Joseph Kern, and actually this is an essay I've been trying to work on, trying to compare, I mean, bring these two characters, Joseph Kern and Tiwari, together. So what happens in Red is that actually there is this man who, I mean, many critics have called him, said that he's like a god figure in that film. And interestingly, he says at one point of the film to the character Irene Jacob is playing that, he actually, there is a similarity between Joseph Kerr and the guy who uh, Irene Jacob is supposed to meet later in the film. And he actually says, Ki, you are the girl I never met in my life. And it almost says, Ki, I mean, what would have changed for Joseph Kerr? And I mean, almost similar thing happens with Tiwari. He says, Ki, I mean, ek thi, ek ladki thi. And then, I mean, सोच रहा हूँ कैंप कोला का फैक्ट्री लगाऊं. They say, I mean, as Sanjay Saroswat, they say it at the same time, and that is the one difference that couldn't happen. Interestingly, Joseph Kern has been actually kind of, critics have seen him as a god figure in Red. In Photograph, he becomes Booth or a ghost. So the curse of not finding love is immortality, be it God or be it ghost. And what is actually kind of defining of the human is mortality and love. And that's where actually, this whole question of, okay, what is it to be a human? Why finding love becomes so important? Because, that's a question that actually kind of becomes important. And for me, this film was largely, as Tarakeshwar sir was saying, it doesn't actually kind of investigate or try to explore, okay, the religion aspect, the class aspect. No, very interestingly, the film ends at a point where actually he says, सारे फिल्मों में वही होता है. And we have seen so many films of earlier times where actually uh, what is the antagonist force for love? It's a religion, the class difference, and all of this. So he says कि इस फिल्म में भी वही, सारे उसका ending भी वही होगा. So will this film also end in the same way then? So if this is also ending in the same way, where actually something is coming in the way of love, then what is that factor? It's certainly not religion in this. It's certainly not the class indifference. What is that? There is a lack of a self which can actually kind of, which that vacuum is reaching out for, is craving for a kind of intimacy, but the self is not formed yet. What is Miloni's self? It's yet to kind of arrive. Even for, it's largely, okay, the mother chooses the dress for her, the father chooses the career for her. What is Miloni? Even Miloni hasn't discovered. And it's the same with Rafi also. Like, he's दादाजी का, ये पाई पाई चुकाना है उसको. And to the, even there's a very interesting point where actually, this grown up man actually asks permission from his grandmother, मैं istinja करके आता हूँ. So where is Rafi? Where is Miloni? It's somewhere actually. As Sanjay sir was saying, it is in the process of actually kind of coming with each other that somewhere they start discovering each other, and the film ends over there. So now, okay, now that this has happened, okay, what was it's not just what makes love impossible or inaccessible is the lack of self. It's not somewhere outside. So it's not the religion, it's not the class, or the social structure or anything. It's a vacuum of of something within, which is actually kind of making this whole thing impossible. There is an anxiety. There is a certain nervousness. Though they want some, there is a craving for this safe space, but still there is an inability to achieve that. And that inability is coming largely, this is how I have been seeing this film. Not because of any external thing, but there is a empty space inside, which is actually it's only when that starts actually kind of getting formed that actually they kind of become easy to explore this journey. The journey is just to start at that point of time. So why the film? In my reading, why it actually kind of ends. हर film में वैसा ही होता है. Every film has that one something which is actually kind of making the coming together of two people. It's coming in the way of that. So what has been happening in all the other films? Okay, the class, the caste, the religion. All these things. Here it's not that. Here it is something within. It's the inside. I'll actually kind of draw this to, Javed Saab was saying this once. In the 50s, the villain was used to be the feudal lord. Then it became the builders. Then it became the Pakistan became the villain. So there has been an evolution in Hindi cinema. If you take the history of, purely Bombay cinema, I'll not even call it Hindi cinema. I'll call it Bombay cinema. there is I mean so that there are these stages. So at this point of time we do not see villains in the cinema. Largely the battle is always with the I mean the protagonist is fighting himself or herself. That's how it has been. So even here what is actually kind of coming in the way, I mean, or making the coming together of these two people, I mean not the father, not anything, it's the something which is missing from inside. And that missing from within was the roadblock as I saw the film. And it's only in yeah I mean when actually kind of he comes to a point where actually he can say that I mean I'll get this cola done. I mean he stand I mean and she says okay I'm not that person who is in the hoarding. That's when actually I mean now there is a possibility of them actually kind of coming together. So for me I mean that whole the I mean and also what was also what made the film so intimate for me probably was there is a I mean both of them lack a safe space in the entire film. In the I mean though they have such a I mean there is a very closely knit family, there's a closely knit friend circle over here, but still there is no safe space where actually uh, I don't know I mean mm, where the self could be formed. So these two become create that kind of bond. And I think that can happen only among strangers, that safe space. I don't know I mean I still don't know. I mean these are things that I've been thinking. But yeah, there's also one more thing. I mean this thought came to me when I watched it for the first time, but now probably I will not stick to that so much, but still I mean I would like to share this. uh, okay, I mean where they've been in a relationship or not was something which actually I mean I couldn't grasp completely in the first viewing. That's why I went the second day to watch it again. So we live in at times where we don't know what is true, what is real, nothing. I mean I don't know I mean like an Urdu poet actually kind of says कि I mean हाय अफसोस ये किस तेजी से दुनिया बदली, ये जो सच है कभी झूठ हुआ करता था. So in a post truth world what is true? So probably the only I mean in a post truth world the only choice you have is to make the most life affirming lie. In that sense, okay, I mean even if this if their relationship is not true, if it's still life affirming, that's a choice that they make. Because I mean or kya hai? I mean what are the other options these two people have? So in that sense that's a safe space. And yeah, I mean and I think it's only there that the love becomes possible for them. And that's also I mean it's also difficult because the battle is I mean I think it's largely I mean it's more easy. uh, I mean this might actually kind of not sound very politically correct, but still I'll make the statement. Probably it's easy to fight a social structure than to battle a devil within. uh, that's why actually I think the struggle is so much. Actually the film I mean ends where it has to begin actually, of a love story. I mean, if it's, I mean, because I mean, all the, I mean, he says, I mean, ये भी सारे पुराने फिल्मों में हुआ. I mean, battling, okay, I mean, religious, I mean, differences, I mean, of interfaith and interclass. All of this can be transcended very, I mean, by some. But if there is no self to fight, then what is that you actually do? I mean, it's like Ramanujan saying, Amazon ದಾಟಬಹುದು, ಅನುದಿನದ ಅಂತರ ಗಂಗೆ ದಾಟುವುದೆಂಗೆ. I mean, it's easy to cross the, I mean, cut through the Amazon, but how do you transcend how do you cross the Ganges which is flowing inside, and how do you touch the horizon which is within the iris? So to me, that was what actually kind of made the film very interesting. Where actually, I mean, the loneliness actually kind of makes you crave for love, but the lack of love makes the loneliness heightened, and it also kind of makes so it's actually kind of I mean it pulls you from different directions, just these two forces. The lack of love feeds into loneliness. Loneliness makes you want to crave for love, and that's the tension. the tension, the tension is not just between the two characters and this thing. I think the tension was also within the craving and the inability within the characters. So yeah, I don't know. These are. Every time I watch it, some thought comes to my mind, and thank you. I'm sorry. I think most of my thoughts have overlapped with many of other thoughts, but yeah, I just thought I'll share. Thank you.
Thank you, Samvartha. Anyone else? Okay. Okay. Thank you very much, Bhaswati. You really set off a very interesting discussion. And good night, and thank you, everybody. Bye.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you,
Good night.
Bhaswati. Thank you.
Thank
Bye.
you.
Good night.
Thank
Good
you,
night.
everyone. It was
Thank
lovely.
you
Good
very
night.
much.
Thank you
Bye. Good
all.
night.
Good
Bye.
night.